Who in here has an IRA or a 401k? That's what I figured, most everyone. Who in here knows exactly how much taxes you're going to have to pay in your retirement? That's what I figured. And that's what we're going here to speak on and learn about tonight. Before we get started, I got 3 promises. Before you guys walk out of this room, you're going to know more than most of your peers as it relates to your retirement income and your taxes, and more than most financial advisors out there. And that's promises we can promise on, so let's get started. So this is the agenda that we're going to talk about tonight, okay? So we're going to look at proactive tax strategies. We're going to look at Roth conversions and do they really work? A lot of misconception on Roth conversions. We're going to look at some high net worth tax strategies. We're going to talk about some bond alternatives out there. The retirement risk window and risk reduction strategies, what families are doing today. But really, it's all about 3 things. You can take all of that down and boil it down to 3 things. Tax control, okay? Because believe it or not, you guys signed up for a partner with your retirement, okay? It's the IRS. We're going to look at how we can protect our income and make sure that we can retire with a paycheck, right? And also, how do we protect our legacy for our beneficiaries, for our heirs? Because I know that's important to most of you in this room. So we want to make sure how we can do the best we can and protect that for them. And without question, these strategies can save you guys hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes. So we're going to talk about some tax-efficient strategies to help you keep more of what you earn as we approach potential tax law changes, okay? So everybody heard that the government made the tax cuts permanent, right? You heard that? That was a big talking point. Here's the facts. What the definition of permanent means in Webster's is different than what the government says permanent means, okay? What it really means is there's no automatic sunset date, okay? The government rephrase that, Congress can and will raise taxes when it needs revenue, okay? Now, we're not here to get political. I don't care what political side you vote on. Math doesn't care about politics, okay? And the math doesn't add up. I like to say math is undefeated, okay? Read it again. That's not my quote. That is from Ed Slott. He is known as America's IRA expert. He's trained over hundreds of thousands of advisors across the country. Your IRA and or 401k is a ticking time bomb, okay? Now, that's the bad news. The good news is there's time. It's not unlimited, but there is time, and we can diffuse that bomb if we start taking proactive strategies now, okay? So we've kind of talked about this already. The big beautiful bill made the 2017 tax cuts permanent. It also increased the standard deduction as well as the estate exemption. But as I've already discussed with you, the reality is permanent in Washington just means that there's no automatic sunset date. That was the whole thing about why it was such a big deal, is because the initial 2017 tax cuts was going to sunset in 25 if they didn't pass the new bill, okay? And so permanent just means that there's no automatic sunset date. But look at these numbers here. By 2035, we will have $63 trillion in national debt. That is 6-3 followed by 12 zeros. 12. Someone take a guess how much that is per person, including children in the United States. It's a good guess. One more. It's a good guess. 175,000 per person, including children. 140% debt to GDP, and $200 trillion in unfunded obligations. So do we think Congress may decide to raise taxes? Okay. Now I know we've heard the tariffs and we've heard all of this stuff, and I sure hope we can figure out something. But the reality is the majority of the tax revenue is coming from Gen X and millennials. It's not coming from you. Okay? The former comptroller of the federal government, David Walker, in his book, Come Back America.
There's some folks out there.
Yeah. The former comptroller of the federal government, David Walker, in his book, Come Back America, he predicted by 2030, the effective tax rate would have to be 45% across the board in order to keep our country solvent. So what's really happened, in my opinion, is the big, beautiful bill just bought us a few more years' time. Okay? And so that's what it takes to start having this. David McKnight, the author of The Power of Zero, has done extensive research on this, and he is also in agreement now. By 2035, taxes will likely have to increase, and it could be substantial.
Another question for you. If that's the debt figures versus our GDP, how is it the stock market? I mean, you look at precious metal double.
Yeah.
How's the stock market still responding with outstanding gains?
It's a very good question. The answer is we don't know. Why? We're at historically low tax rates and historically high stock market. It don't add up, right? So the question is, when is this bubble going to burst? It can't go on forever.
Well, obviously, you know it's being manipulated. Let me show it.
We got a lot. I forgot to say this. Listen, I want questions tonight. I want us to have a very interactive seminar. But if you ask me a question, I tell you to make a note of that. Just write it down. You'll find a note sheet. And the reason is because that question is either irrelevant to the whole group, might even confuse the whole group, or confuse a CPA. I'm not pointing that to you, sir. Just write it down, because I do want to make sure we get this covered in a proper time fashion, because I promise you they're going to kick us out before it's over here. So $63 trillion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 zeros. Okay? Something has to give. The computer needs to quit banging. So here's the thing. You have time, not unlimited. You have 10 years. 10 years to take back control of your assets. 10 years to start repositioning your income and your retirement assets. And I like to say, buy that business partner out while taxes are on sale. Okay? And there's many ways to do that, and we're going to talk about them in a moment. But we are currently, believe it or not, I know it don't feel like it when you look at your pay stub, okay? We currently have the lowest tax rates we've ever had in the history of our country outside of 2 years in the early 90s, while simultaneously having the highest national debt we've ever had in the history of our country, okay? So something has to give, right? Are we going to lower benefits for Social Security and Medicare by 23%? Or are we going to raise taxes on the rest of us by 23%? Right? All right. Ed Slott does this all the time. Here's the question. What plan do you guys want? Okay? You got two options. You want option A, which is the government's plan. They decide when you pay taxes in the form of required minimum distributions, RMD for short. They decide how much you pay. You don't get to pick. RMD forces withdrawals at age 73 for most of you in this room. If you're a little bit younger, then it is pushed to 75. And your heirs, they get to pay even more. They have 10 years only to pay those taxes if you pass away prematurely, or not even have to be prematurely, when you pass away and they inherit it. Your spouse, they get to inherit it as if it's their own, so it gets to go the same RMD schedule. But anyone outside of spouse, they have 10 years, period. And guess what? If they don't get it all out in 10 years, they have a 50% penalty on top of the taxes. Or you get to choose option B, your plan. You control when you pay. You choose your own tax rate within reason. No RMD on Roth accounts. It's also not counted as provisional income, which means if you're receiving most of your income in retirement from Roth, it could potentially lower the tax on your Social Security. It could potentially lower your Medicare premium. And my favorite part is it's tax-free inheritance to your heirs. There's no RMDs. They still have 10 years to get it out. That just means we can let it grow tax-free for 10 more years. That's when an effective estate plan comes into play. So sometimes I get asked in these seminars, Jeremiah, I tell you what, I kind of like the government's plan. Tell me more about that. Yeah. Anyone in here wants the government's plan? Most of you are on it right now, even though you don't realize it. So, as we talk, here's the current tax brackets, the potential future rates. That's just showing basically what we would, had we have not passed a bill, we would have reverted back to the green chart. Okay? But since we did pass the bill, we remained on the black or blue, whatever. I think it's blue. It's supposed to be blue. But as we've just stated, you know, the former comptroller of the federal government, David Walker, predicted 45% across the board. People said, Jeremiah, how's that going to happen? Quick story. Ronald Reagan, remember he was an actor before he was president, right? 1946, he refused to do more than 2 movies a year. Do you know why he refused? He got paid $100,000 per movie. And anything over $200,000 was a 96% tax rate. Just a few years ago, in 22, I believe it was, 21, mortgage rates went from 3% to 8% in 6 months. Guess where they're at now? About 6.5%. They go up fast. They don't come down quite as fast in most cases. Just giving you a little example here. A married couple with $300,000 taxable income could see their effective tax rate by 2 to 4%, which would potentially add another $6,000 to $12,000 a year in taxes. Multiply that by 10 or 20 in retirement, just on a 2% climb. Imagine what it would be if it was 10 or 15 or 20. So our strategy is simple. I've got many clients. I look at around the room. I've got many clients. Appreciate y'all being here tonight. You've heard this before. Pay taxes now while they're on sale, because they are the lowest they're ever going to be the rest of your life. Now, some of you may have heard before, oh, the break-even point though. That break-even, you're gonna have to live till you're 83 for it to make sense. Last time I checked, if you look at your tax bracket, there's no age requirement on it. Okay? Now, you're right. The question may be, do I pay the taxes or I just kick the can down the road and let my kids or my spouse pay the taxes? The decision's yours. But I will tell you, if you wait around and you wait too long, you won't have enough time to get it done. Right? And then there's what's called the widow's penalty. Anybody heard of that penalty? Because they don't advertise it. You're married, you're in the most favorable tax bracket there is. When somebody dies, you automatically become in the least favorable tax bracket is. So your spouse, and most of us, it's going to be our wives that we leave behind, are going to go from they're going to inherit all of the funds that was in your name. So now their RMD is higher, their tax rate is much higher, and guess what? They can no longer do Roth conversions. You cannot convert inherited IRA money. And as we've said, if it's your kids or grandkids, they've got 10 years. It starts ticking pretty fast. So there's a couple ways to do as far as income timing. You can accelerate your income. Okay, so you can pay taxes now at today's rates. So that's going to be your, most people, when they come in my office, they've said, well, I assumed I would be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. And that could be right. And listen, about 88% of America is, because they're living solely on Social Security. 12% of America, and that includes all of our clients, and I'm going to assume most of the people in the room, they want to be in a lower tax bracket, but they don't want to make less money. They want to have a same standard of living. Okay? So you can do Roth conversions now. You can look at exercise stock options. You can go ahead and start realizing capital gains while they are low. You can also look at bonus timing if you have any bonuses or things of that nature. You can defer deductions. So you can save deductions for when they're worth more, so you can bunch charitable gifts into 1 year. We'll talk about that shortly. It's called a donor advised fund. You can delay property tax payments potentially, some time and some medical expenses, business expense timing. So there's some ways to defer some deductions for later. You can also do bracket management. So fill up those lower brackets, okay? You can do partial Roth conversions. Believe it or not, you can harvest capital gains at 0% rate if you do it appropriately. You can also look to optimize your Social Security. And that's something that we specialize in as well. I was blessed to be honored as the 2023 National Social Security Advisor of the Year. So we're going to talk a little bit about Social Security tonight. I'll do a lot of just individual Social Security trainings, but we'll get into a little bit of that tonight. But here's the thing. If I go back real quick, you really got a choice. We can go ahead and pay 22 cents or 24 cents on the dollar now, or we can keep kicking the can down the road and pay 32, 35, or 37 cents later. It's really your choice. So here we go. Charitable, tax smart, charitable giving. Okay. Has anyone ever heard of a DAF account, Donor Advised Fund? Most of you are pretty charitable in here, I'm going to assume. So you tithe, right, where we are in the South. I shouldn't have said that. People tithe all over the country. But when you've accumulated assets, what you can do is you can bunch them together. You can create a DAF, a Donor Advised Fund. Think of it as your own personal foundation. I'm sure you've heard of the Bill Gates Foundation. I'm not going to go there. But So hypothetically, let's say that you typically tithe or donate or give to charity $10,000 a year. Okay? What you can do is you can bunch those together, $50,000 into a DAF account. You get the full deduction in that year. But so the funds are no longer yours. You don't own them. Your foundation does, but you can control them. So then you can, if you want to, you can go ahead and give it all to the church now, or you can $10,000 a year for the next 5 years and let it keep having the ability to grow while it's in that account. There are some limitations, whether it's cash or whether it's stocks and investments and things of that nature. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but that's one strategy that you can look at. There's also qualified charitable distributions. So when you turn 70 and a half, you can transfer up to $111,000 directly from your IRA to the charity. All right? That counts towards your RMD, but it's not taxable income. So you kind of get the double benefit of that. Same thing with appreciated stock options. You can donate appreciated securities instead of cash. So you avoid the capital gains and get a deduction for the full market value. So if you are charitable, there's other ways to think about doing it, as we've said here. So instead of giving the $10,000 a year for 5, contribute $50 in 1 year to your DAF. You're looking at a potential tax savings anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000, just depending on your state and your actual bracket that you're in. So it's a pretty amazing couple options that most people probably haven't heard about before. Roth conversions. I get this. I don't know why it's so. Well, I do know why. I do know why, and I don't mind sharing it. Why it's so controversial, Roth conversions. I'm going to tell you right now, okay? If you're working with an advisor and they've told you, well, I've had more I've already said this, come in. I was told I was too old to do Roth conversions. Here's the facts, okay? If I had a whiteboard, I'd whiteboard it. Most of you, if you have an advisor, you're paying probably 1% assets under management fee for your assets. And let's just say hypothetically you was going to convert it all in 1 year and pay 25% taxes. So your account just dropped by 25%, right? Because unless you pay the taxes with cash, and most of us don't have the ability to do that because we got all our money in our IRA 401ks. So you have $100,000. You convert it all and pay $25,000 to the IRS. There's now $75,000 that advisor is managing. So guess what just happened? They took a 25% pay cut because you did that Roth conversion. It's my opinion. It's not a fact, but it's my opinion. Now, if you're already kind of up in the, later years of your retirement and your life, maybe you don't have family, maybe you don't have, heirs that you want to pass on tax-free inheritance to. I'm not saying everybody should do Roth conversions, but I will say this: if you are approaching retirement or just in it, you're in this 5-year, we call it the retirement risk window, retirement dead zone, 5 years before, 5 years after. Yeah, you really need to start considering it because it's going to affect you substantially in the next decade. So how do they work? Well, you got money in your traditional IRA, which is pre-tax dollars. IRA, when I say IRA, 401k, they're the same, pre-tax, okay? You then pay tax now, then you stick it in a Roth IRA. It can be the same exact stocks, the same exact bonds, although I wouldn't advise on bonds. It could be the same ETFs. Okay, it doesn't matter what the investment is. It's the tax instrument that it's wrapped in. Okay, then it can grow tax-free forever. Then in your retirement, you can take out tax-free withdrawals, lowers provisional income, also pass on tax-free funds to your heirs, your kids. So you have tax-free growth. So do you think it would be important to start working on it today? Because the sooner you have it in Roth, the sooner it can start compounding tax-free. And compounding don't work in 1 year. Compounding works over a long period of time. So the longer your time horizon, the more valuable this becomes. As I mentioned before, there's no RMDs. Roth IRAs have no RMD during your lifetime, so they continue growing tax-free as long as you want. And it's the hedge. You can lock in today's rates. So if tax rates rise in the future, you've already paid. So let's just say this. Let's just be real. In 10 years, the worst, if you did your Roth conversions, best case scenario, we get in 10 years and taxes stay the same. Who cares? You've already paid them. Do we think they can be lower? I don't think so. So let's start paying them while we know what they're on sale. Here's a little example, okay? Scenario A, you don't do Roth conversions. You were told you were too old. You just decided, I don't like paying taxes, so I'm gonna wait as long as I can. If you start with $100,000, after 20 years, it's worth $387,000 with a 7% return, okay? At withdrawal, you're going to be taxed in the 24% bracket, assuming that's what it is. Imagine if it was 45, that's double that number. But even at 24%, the net is $294,000. Or scenario B is the Roth conversion. We have $100,000 today. We go ahead and do Roth conversions. In this example, we just paid that money from our pocket. We had enough money in savings. That is the best way to do it. So we get all of the money in the Roth. But I assure you, doing something's better than doing nothing. So after 20 years, you have the same amount, $387,000. You're not taxed on that money again. So guess what? Your net's $387,000. So the lower tax rate now versus higher later equals a win. More years equals more tax-free growth. Again, if you can pay from non-retirement funds, that's going to be your best results. So that would be money in the bank. That would be non-qualified funds. So think of just your stocks or your broker's accounts, things of that nature you've been saving or investing outside of IRA money, okay? And I get this happens a lot. Talk to me. State taxes. If you've been thinking about moving in retirement, consider a state with no state tax. That's right there going to save you anywhere from 3 to 10% just on the state. It's 5 in Alabama. You can move in 30 minutes up the road and be no state tax, or maybe go down to Florida. I know a lot of people want to go down to whether or not all the others, obviously if there's no state tax, they're going to get you somewhere, but we're talking about Roth conversions here, right? So if the ideal candidate for Roth conversions, you're currently in a lower tax bracket than expected in retirement, you've got at least 10 years, or you've got 10 plus years to retirement. Go ahead and start now. You can pay taxes from non-retirement funds. You have a large traditional IRA facing significant RMDs, which is going to be the majority of you in the room. You want to leave tax-free inheritance to your kids and grandkids, and you believe tax rates will increase. Just cautionary, right? If you're currently in your peak earning years, the highest bracket, we probably need to wait. You're going to need money within 5 years. The reality is Roth IRA money is going to be the last money you're going to spend. So this doesn't really apply for our clients because we're also going to go start spending the money today from the pre-tax. So we're living on that money and paying taxes at the lowest rates. Expect much lower income in retirement, or you plan to donate your IRA to charity. We talked about that. That is a better option than Roth conversions if you plan to do that. Or conversions would push you into the 32, okay? The 24% is the greatest sweet spot. That's the sweet spot, okay? Most of you in this room, I'm assuming you're going to be in the 22. The 24 allows another $187,000 in 1 year you can convert for only 2% more on the margin. So what that does, it can shrink the amount of time it takes for us to get it done. So I don't typically recommend, doing it all at once. And first of all, I don't recommend converting 100% of your assets, right? Because the magic rule of thumb, the magic number is by the time you reach RMD, you want to have about $400,000 or less in your pre-tax. Because the standard deduction, especially now for 65 and older, is $6,000 per, $12,000 for a couple. If you converted it all, now all of your money is coming from Roth, you don't get to take advantage of the standard deduction. So that's why having about 400 or less, you get to take that money, your RMD will be required to come out, but your standard deduction is going to wipe it away. So that's a triple compound, and you got to put it in, contribute it tax deferred, let it grow tax deferred, and pull it out tax free. Okay? But some people they get scared, they don't want to do it, so they just take it all at once. We look to do a strategic, approach over time. So this just gives you an example of doing $100,000 a year at the 22% versus doing the full amount and bumping you into the 32% bracket. So it really works especially well in the years between retirement and your RMD. All right, so some tax strategies used for high net worth families. There's asset allocation strategies, tax loss harvesting, estate and gift planning. There's also some trust strategies as well. And before I kind of mention, anyone in the room, as you've already identified, I got many clients in here. Anyone in the room, we're going to be offering you guys the ability to sit down with us complimentary to run your numbers and look at all that. So if that's something you're interested in, you can kind of be thinking about that. But asset location, put the right assets in the right accounts. So tax deferred, think taxable bonds, high turnover funds, which would be mutual funds, which are slowly dying away. Actively managed funds that's going to be actively, not passively managed, real estate investment trust. So income tax is ordinary income when they're withdrawn anyway. So tax-free, so your Roth IRAs, your Roth 401ks, think your growth. Those are for growing. So we want some high growth stocks. Now, I'm not going to say a little bit riskier, right? Small cap funds, emerging markets, assets with the highest expected growth. We want to maximize tax-free growth for the biggest gainers. And then your taxable accounts, brokerage, think index funds, which are tax efficient. The difference between an exchange-traded index fund, ETF, and a mutual fund, ETFs don't have to be sold every year and realize gains. Mutual funds do. So some of you get a 1099 every year anyway because their mutual funds have to be sold and then you just turn around and rebuy at whatever the current price. ETFs don't have to do that, so they're good for taxable accounts. Municipal bonds, they're good for brokerage accounts. Qualified dividend stocks. Long-term holdings, okay? This is what we like to call our growth accounts. Money that you really don't plan to spend anytime soon, because they can benefit from lower long-term capital gain rates and a step-up basis. So that's kind of an idea of thinking about controlling taxes, is making sure you've got the right assets in the right accounts. This is tax loss harvesting. This is really going to apply for those after-tax accounts, the brokerage accounts that we were just talking about, okay? And so what you want to do is you want to sell investments at a loss to offset capital gains, or up to $3,000 of ordinary income per year, and unused losses carry forward. So how does it work? Well, let's say that you've had you've had Apple stock since it was $100 a share, $50 a share, whatever, right? You've got a high cost basis or low cost basis, so you've got a high gain in that account. Well, you could potentially sell some Apple, okay, if you have a loss, buy similar, not identical assets. You did buy another, I don't know, you could buy NVIDIA, for example, and use loss to offset gains. So if you have a $20,000 gains in this year, without harvesting, tax on $20,000 at the 15% would be $3,000. With a $15,000 loss harvested, you could be taxed on $5,000 at 15%. So it's going to save you over $2,000 in taxes. So here's some kind of allowed swaps. It has to be, it can't be substantially identical, all right? So you got an S&P 500 ETF. You could sell at a loss and purchase a total market ETF. Or if you have an individual stock, you could sell a loss and purchase a sector ETF. Or you have one bond fund, you could sell at a loss and buy a similar donation, a duration fund. So you want to review your portfolio quarterly for harvesting opportunities. Market volatility actually creates more chances to harvest losses, right? Who in here owns any bonds or bond funds? Most of you probably do, just don't recognize it. How'd that work out for you in 22? Yeah. Bonds used to be the safe part of our investments, right? That's the way they've always kind of been. But in 2022, it was the worst 60-40 year in over 50 years. Bonds and stocks were all down at the same time because it's supposed to be inverted. Stocks go up, bonds go down. Stocks go down, bonds go up. Interest rates go up, bond prices go down, which is what happened in 22, right? And so that's the problem. Traditional bonds may not be the best solution. So there's other bond alternatives out there that we prefer to use in our strategies, okay? And so this gives you an idea here. In 2022, the S&P 500 was down 18%. The aggregate bond index was down 13%. So the 60-40 portfolio was down 16% in 2022. So the safe portion of your portfolio lost 13%. It was the worst year for bonds since 1842. And bond interest is taxed as ordinary income as well at rates up to 37%, as we already know. So there are other bond alternatives. One of them is what is called a fixed indexed annuity. And let me explain how this works. Anyone in here ever went rock climbing? Okay. There's two ways to climb a rock. One is called the free climb. I watched a documentary on Netflix one time about this, and I was sitting on the edge of my seat the whole time, okay? Here's what they do. They put on some shoes with good grip. They chalk up them hands, and they've got these little pockets that hang on their thing that's got chalk in it. And that's it. And they can scale up that mountain in the cracks and valleys and all of that, and they can get up it real fast. But one toe slips off, one hand slips, they can fall 3,000 feet to their death. Or the other way, which is the way most people do it, is they climb with stakes and clips. So they get these really long ropes. They get the same shoes, the same chalk, but now they are carrying long ropes and these stakes, and about every 25 feet, they'll hammer this stake in, and then they'll clip in, and they'll keep climbing, okay? So if that toe slips, hand slips, the worst they can do is fall to that last clip that they put in. That's how a fixed index annuity works as it relates to accumulating retirement income in retirement, okay? So it gives you the ability to protect and secure those gains that you're making, so you know that worst case scenario, you're just going to fall to the last stake, not to the bottom, right? I was managing, it was Wachovia, if y'all remember Wachovia, and then became Wells Fargo. I was at my desk the Friday of 2008 when the stock price went to a penny. They told us we'd be Chase Bank on Monday, we'd come back and we're Wells Fargo Bank. They brokered a better deal with the FDIC. It's why you see Wells Fargo's here now. During that time, Wachovia, it was first Alabama, then it was South Trust, then it was Wachovia, and there's probably some way before that. And we had employees working there that the majority of their retirement was in the bank stock. And they were told just to hang on. So imagine if you were retiring in 2007 or 2008 versus retiring in 2009. Your outlook completely different. It took 1 year to rebound. But people retire in 08, trying to pull out or was in retirement, that's where they were seeing this. They were on the free climb, right? So just give you an example. It's the market up, you climb, you earn gains up to a cap. Typically there's caps on the gains, okay? But those gains are locked in, new stake. Market goes down, you stay at your stake, meaning you don't drop, right? And then the next year you get to climb to the new highest position when the markets return. Markets are up 7 out of 10, it's just the 3. You don't know when they're coming, you don't know how bad they're going to be. Right? So this is a $100,000 example. I love giving examples. Year 1 in the market. Say all your money is in the market, right? Number 1, 12% year 1, then a 20% negative in year 2, and then a 15% positive in year 3. After 3 years, you got $103,000. Or you're using the bond alternative. You got part of your assets in a FIA. First year, the market was up 12, you got 8. Year 2, the market's down 20, you earn 0. Year 3, market is up 15, you earn 8. After 3 years, you have $116,000. Right? There is a confidence that structure can give in retirement. Okay? And so the point is, FIAs let you clip in each year, locking in gains so you never drop below your last stake. Now, FIAs are not the only bond alternative, so let's look at some others. You have MYGAs, that stands for multi-year guaranteed annuities. Think of it like a CD from an insurance company. It's usually going to be a fixed rate, you know exactly what you're going to get. There's a fixed term, right? Usually guaranteed rate between 3 to 10 years. You got principal protection, you have tax deferred growth. They're often higher than bank CDs. Okay, that's best for our safe bucket. That's best for CD replacements. Or you have, this is one of my favorites, other alternatives, buffer ETFs. Again, exchange traded funds. They have defined outcome ETFs that buffer against losses. Innovator's a company that we like, as this purchased by Goldman Sachs. There's First Trust, there's some others. The way it works is they have a buffer, usually anywhere from 9 up to 25%. Okay. Also, they have caps, right? So if the market goes up 15, you might earn 11. But if the market drops 20, let's say you have a 25% buffer, if the market drops 20, you don't lose a dime. The market's got to go below 25% for you to lose money in that particular ETF. In the last 50 years, it's only happened one time. It's not 2008. And so even if the market was down 37% like it was in 08, your account would have only been down 12 because you had that 25% buffer. It resets annually. It's our most liquid option. And then structured notes, these are bank-issued securities with customized risk and return portfolios. So they have principal protection options, there's enhanced yield potential, there's various terms between 1 and 70 years. But you do have the issuer credit risk. If the bank fails and you got some structured notes from that bank, not going to be too good. But, that's why we don't look at, we look at the most secure, most liquid, best banks that's offering them out there. And we've got some companies that help negotiate those rates. But unlike a bank CD or bank cash, structured notes are not FDIC insured. They are the most customizable. That just gives you an example of some different bond alternatives. So Seth had told you I wrote the book, Retire with a Paycheck. Think like a pension manager, not a day trader. We're in Huntsville. I'm going to assume a lot of you probably work at the Redstone Arsenal, Boeing, things of that nature. I'm pretty confident you would not accept a 20% decline in your paycheck if the market's down 20%. Is that a fair statement? Yet we retire and we have to become a day trader. We got to work. Do I tax loss harvest this? Do I Roth convert today? Do I wait? What bucket of my monies do I pull up? Do I spend my tax deferred first? Do I spend my Roth, the tax-free money first? You're watching the markets. Every time the market swings a point, you're worried. You move to cash, right? And then the market's going back good, and everybody's happy, and everybody says get back in. So you have the FOMO, fear of missing out, and then you get back in, and you missed out on the climb. You're back in the highs again, right? Pension managers don't think that way. They align their assets with purpose. They give every dollar a job. So back in April and March, when the market took those major dips and right back out, you think pension managers was doing anything? Not a thing. Because they were prepared for it. They could ride that climb right back up without even worrying about it. So it's a proven strategy to protect protected income, maintain flexibility, and build lasting wealth. That's what I was talking about, structure, right? It's no matter what the markets do. So we have 3 buckets: safe bucket, freedom bucket, and growth bucket. And then this is how we protect against what's called the sequence of returns risk. That's the biggest risk in retirement, okay? It's the order of how you receive those returns. In the very first years of retirement, a downturn means way more than it does in the later years of retirement. Kind of talking about that with the sequence of returns risk. So look at this scenario A. You got a good start, okay? First year was 15% return. Second year was 10% return. Third year was a 20% decline. Your portfolio lasts 30 years, excuse me. Or you could start and just flip it. You start your first year in retirement with a 20% decline, then you got a 10% return and a 15% return. Your portfolio is going to run out in 22 years. So simply just the reverse in the order of those returns made a difference of 8 years in your retirement. Now spread that out over 10 years and imagine what it looks like, right? Same returns, different orders, 8-year difference. So the 5 years before and after retirement are the most vulnerable. A major loss during this window can permanently reduce your retirement income. And so the solution is to create a safe bucket of protected income that covers your essential living expenses. This prevents you from selling stocks and bonds and ETFs at a loss because you are compounding your loss. And that's why we call retire with a paycheck. So we help put together the strategy so we figure out what is your retirement income gap. So what's your Social Security going to be? Do you have any pensions? Anybody have a pension in here? And you don't work for the state of Alabama or the federal government? That's what I figured. But if you do have a pension and you have more than $500,000 in the bank, congratulations, you're in the top 4% of all the retirees. So we figure out how much is your bills? The bills that has to be paid: groceries, utilities, medical, like medicines, prescriptions, property taxes, car insurance, stuff that has to be paid, no matter what, right? Then from there, that's your number. Subtract out how much your Social Security is predicted to be or projected. if you're going to have any pensions or you got any other sources of income you know is going to come in, like maybe rental real estate, things of that nature. Then you got the gap. Then when we know the gap, we got to figure out how much it's going to take to fill that gap to create. So how much of the asset do we have to take to fill that gap for income, okay? So cover the essential expenses, no market risk, income for life is protected. So when the market drops, your bills are paid. You're not having to be forced to sell at a loss. You can let it come back, okay? Because we know it will, typically higher than it went down, okay? Especially these days with all the big hedge funds, because as soon as it drops, they're going to be buying it back up and it's going to shoot back up. Then we have the freedom bucket. This is the bucket that you get to say, this is the yes bucket. Grandkids need help paying college? Yes. You want to give to your favorite charity and churches? Yes. You want to take that Viking cruise around Iceland? Yes. Hot water heater burst? Yes. Okay? The goal is to live your best life, 100% liquid on your terms. So we're going to fill that bucket with some of these alternatives we talked about. Maybe an FIA, maybe some buffer ETFs, maybe cash, maybe high yield savings. Okay? And then everything else goes into our growth bucket. This is the money that we're not going to plan to spend until probably 10, 15, 20, maybe ever. This is for potential long-term care needs. This is for legacy growth, okay? This is where we're going to do the strategic Roth conversions. We want to get this growth bucket all tax-free as fast as possible, okay? So we want to outpace inflation with this bucket. We want it to have legacy. We have time to recover. So it's tax-free growth. So this, when you divide your assets by purpose, you give every dollar a job, that's how you can live comfortably and confident in retirement. You're not constantly watching the markets and the movements and, the 2 days that the market went up that we missed out on and think you're not worrying about that. You're worrying about the long-term plan there, right? Your essentials are always covered. The freedom to live your life. Growth has time to recover. You get to retire with a paycheck. So the safe bucket replicates the paycheck experience you're already used to. Predictable income every single month. So it does 4 things. You got your income protected. You got your downside covered. You have taxes optimized and you have your legacy secured. So the result, predicted income $100,000 plus annually while maintaining flexibility, growth, and legacy. Many people feel like, I don't want to give up control. Structure is what creates the best retirement. Couple of risk reduction strategies. We've been talking about some of them already. Social Security optimization, healthcare planning, long-term care considerations, and creating your action plan. Who in here has any long-term care insurance? That's more than I figured. 73% of you, everybody in this room, will have some type of long-term care event in your lifetime. Only 40% of Americans over the age of 40 have any type of protection and plan. I'll ask people, what's your plan for long-term care? One guy said a 357 Magnum. There's better options. Some people said, the VA, I don't care what your plan is. I'm not here to sell you insurance. I'm not an insurance agent. But you got to have a plan. It may be sell your house. It may be a reverse mortgage. It may be some type of, long-term care alternative. But make sure you have a plan. Social Security optimization, okay? The timing of when you claim Social Security can mean the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. The average household misses out on $111,000 in Social Security over their lifetime for just pulling the trigger at the wrong time, okay? So as an example, if you, just seeing a typo here, if you file early at age 62, you'll get 75% of your benefit. 70% of the benefit if you're claiming spousal deduction, spousal benefit, okay? If you wait and take it at your full retirement age, for most of you in this room, it's going to be 67. Some of you might be to 66 in some months, but you get 100% of your benefit. Or if you delay until 70, you'll get 124% of it. So you'll get an additional 24% on your check every month for the rest of your life. And if you're the primary earner in the home, it's going to be the rest of your spouse's life too. Okay? Delay strategy to consider, maybe delay claiming to maximize your lifetime benefits, especially if you're worried about maximizing it for your spouse. I had a gentleman call me up one time. He said, Jeremiah, I think I've shortchanged my wife. What do you mean? He said, well, I was getting ready to turn 67, so I called up the Social Security Administration. I said, my understanding is next month when I turn 67 that I can claim my benefit and keep working and there's no detriment to me. Is that correct? She said, yes, sir, that is. He said, is there any reason why I shouldn't go ahead and file and claim? She said, I don't see any reason. What she didn't know or care to ask, he was a business owner, made really good money, had no intentions of retiring anytime soon, and oh, by the way, his wife was 10 years younger than him. So now in his retirement, he's receiving 24% less than he could have been if he would have delayed, and inevitably his wife will receive 24% less in her retirement for inevitably much longer after he goes. Simply because to that young lady on the phone, she didn't see any reason not to. Does that mean everybody should claim, wait till 70? No, it doesn't mean that. Okay? It means that if you don't necessarily need the money right now for retirement, it may be something to consider delaying, because that's a guaranteed 8% return on that money for 3 years, compounded. Okay? The break even is typically between 80 and 82. So if you expect to live longer than that, delaying often pays off pretty significantly. If you anticipate living much shorter than that, then you should probably file early. If you're going to die early, you should file early. But here's what I'll tell you, it's a fact. Most people live longer than they anticipate. Have a client tell me a story about his dad. When he retired, he was offered a pension. And he took it over 10 years. So he wanted the highest he could get because he didn't expect to live 10 years. 22 years later, he's been without a pension for 12 years, living solely on Social Security. So you can see in this example, if you took it at age 67, get $3,000. But if you took it at 62, you're only going to get $2,100. If you waited till 70, you get $3,720. So it's a difference between $1,620 a month from that age 62 to 70. That's $19,000 per year for life. It adds up pretty substantially, especially with cost of living adjusted. We've kind of talked about this on long-term care. 70% of people over 65 will need some kind of long-term care. Medicare does not cover long-term care. It only covers the nursing home, and you don't get to pick which one you go to, and you don't get to pick your roommate. I promise you, my mother complains about it every day. Now she didn't have a roommate. She was falling. Now she's got a roommate. She don't like her roommate because she's never in there. Well, Mom, she's in there at night. That's when we need her in there. The average retirement health care cost for Medicare premium is $165,000 plus in your lifetime. Out-of-pocket cost, $150,000. Long-term care, if needed, between $100,000 and $500,000, just depending on how fancy you need it and want it. So potential between $400,000 and $800,000 in health care costs in your lifetime. So here's some strategies families are using. They are maximizing their health savings account. You get a triple tax benefit, grows tax-free for health care and retirement. And after you turn 65, you can use it for other things as well. Maybe some hybrid long-term care / life insurance policies. There's some really good ones out there that it's not a use it or lose it. It's I got it if I need it, but if I don't got it, my family is going to receive a tax-free death benefit. But if I need it, I get a tax-free monthly benefit to help me with my long-term care. Or a lot of people are just planning to do is I'm just going to self-insure. That's potentially a strategy, depending on how much money you got. So you maybe earmark specific assets for potential long-term care. That might be your house. Okay. A reverse mortgage is a good option for long-term care. It's just a mortgage. I don't do reverse mortgages, but they're not like they used to be when Tom Selleck was advertising them. Especially in Alabama, they are FHA only. They only do 30 to 35% LTV. Okay? And it's just a mortgage. When you die, your kids get to choose. They want to keep the house? Fine. Sell it. Pay off the reverse mortgage, they keep the difference. It's what they're going to do anyway. They're going to sell that house. Okay? Or Medicare plan, choosing the right Medigap or Advantage plan that may cover some costs there. But you need to address these costs early in your retirement, not late. All right, so what are our priorities? You guys find there's a retirement reality checklist in your folder. I would encourage every one of you guys to pay attention and start looking at that. Not now, but when you go home. That's for you to keep, okay? Evaluate whether Roth conversion opportunities is going to be good for you. Review your tax bracket, optimize income timing. Consider charitable giving strategies, a donor advised fund, or qualified charitable distributions. Review your estate plan before exemptions change. Look to see if there's any tax loss harvesting opportunities in your taxable accounts. What you need to do going forward is start planning to build your safe bucket, 7+ years of retirement income. Consider optimizing your Social Security claiming strategy. Review your asset location across your accounts. Address health care and long-term care planning. Look at reviewing some bond alternatives for your income needs, but most importantly, get a comprehensive retirement income plan that addresses all of these together. One more thing. You guys can learn the strategies. You can figure out all that has to be done. But if you leave this room tonight and you don't take action, then it means nothing. Time is ticking. We don't have forever. Tax rates are going to have to change at some point. Potentially less than 10 years, depending on how the next election goes. So it's time to start making your plan today. Three things to take away. Permanent is an illusion. Congress can and will raise taxes when they need to drive revenue. You've got a 10-year window. Use this time to strategically reposition your savings through Roth conversions and tax-efficient planning. And decide, do you want the government's plan or do you want your plan? Because again, right now you're on there. Take control of your taxes. Don't leave it to the government to decide when and how much you pay. So here's my offer tonight. For any of you in this room, if you want us to, we could offer you a complimentary retirement analysis. We're going to look at your plan, your numbers, your strategies. Okay? Worst case scenario, you're going to leave this 1-hour strategy session with some best actions and good practices and next action items, okay? So if you want to take advantage of it tonight, when we get up, you'll see a calendar back here in the room. Seth will have it. There's some sticky notes on that calendar. Inside, there's a response form. I'd love for you got to take a minute or two and fill out this form. Give us some feedback on this presentation tonight. And when you finish up, if you want to meet with us, with our team, get a retirement analysis for you, pull off one of the sticky notes. It's going to be best time for you and your spouse, and just stick it on the section where it says, tell me your best options. We've already got those on the calendar. If you've got any questions on that calendar, Seth can answer those for you. I will be around for a few minutes for questions. But listen, the best time to act was yesterday. The second best time is today. Other than that, guys, I hope we've given you some value tonight. Hope I've illuminated what your retirement income can look like for you and what it does now. And I appreciate your time. Y'all have a blessed evening. Thank you so much.